Alright, good evening, folks. It is about 5 after the hour, and we're gonna do some Blender and Unity today. Before I get too into that, I wanted to give you a little sneak peek at some of the things we're gonna make. We may not have time for all of these and in all of this same amount of detail, but here are some things that I made over the past couple of days preparing for this workshop. So I have some assets I modeled in Blender. We got some trees, we got some grass, we got some fences, a barn, and this little bunny character. And I have a few little animations on here too, because being able to import your animations and make sure they're working is an important part of game development. So that's what we got. Little bunny hop. But before I get too much into Blender and Unity, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Matt. I'll be one of your mentors for the Code Chrysalis Global Game Jam site. I'm very briefly an ex-game industry veteran. Veteran is not the right word. I was at a mobile game startup for about a year. But I also really enjoy indie game development. My partner and I recently put out a game called Terra Nova. It doesn't have anything to do with Blender or Unity, but I like to brag about it anyway. And it does have something to do with Global Game Jam, because our initial prototype for that game is something that we developed during Global Game Jam 2019. So, beyond that, I've been a participant in a lot of game jams. Some of them I've worked in 3D, some of them not. And I've been using Blender since about 2007. Sometimes I think that amount of experience helps, sometimes I don't know if it does or not. Blender has changed a lot in the years since then, and so some of my habits are still to try to use features that have moved or don't exist anymore. Any case, I'll be making some mistakes during this workshop, no doubt, but I figure that's okay, because you'll all be making some mistakes during your game jam, and knowing how to roll with it and move on is that's part of game development.
Totally true. And I'm CJ, the other half of the Terra Nova team. You can sort of see me. Here we go. I am going to be co-organizing Global Game Jam in Roppongi, Tokyo, and I'm here to just kind of support Matt as he's walking through this, asking dumb questions, etc.
Yeah.
So if you see me like on my laptop, it's probably because I'm moderating the stream. None of you better be naughty. I'm gonna get you. And I just realized the chat is not logged in. Look at that.
Not showing up on our.
Why is that?
Stream. What can we do about that?
Click the the chat settings.
It's time to troubleshoot OBS.
Okay. Free chat from jail.
Yeah.
Not until you're nice. Let's see.
Hang on, I'm gonna make sure we're.
Oh, yeah, and in the background you'll hear our cat, who is really, if neither parent are with her while she's sleeping on the rug, she gets up here and she yells at us, because it's just not fair.
It sure isn't. Alright, how do we get this chat onto our stream?
Check out Docs.
Docs. Chat. I can turn it off and back on again.
Yeah,
Sometimes that works. I don't think that worked. Maybe
Click
this
in
one.
here and then double click this.
Okay.
One moment, please. I would like you to change the URL to this.
Okay.
Yes! We're being so bad.
Let's give that a shot. Hey, it's maybe still Maybe still not logged in. Huh.
No. Then let's remove it and then put it back in again.
Okay. How do I do that?
Let's see. Yes. Right click, remove. And now we're gonna add source. Yeah, browser.
Need to add browser source.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Isn't she lovely? Don't you have such a nice singing voice? Yeah. Yes, you do.
Well,
while Mabby's is doing this, I'll show you.
That's our browser source, and it is
very small.
Okay.
Huh. Yeah. Oh no. Oh boy. Okay. I'll let you go.
All right. We're going to have a second take at all of this. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our stream on how to set up OBS.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wonder why it's not working. It's weird. One last thing I want you to try, and then we can just give it up.
Okay.
Go to File.
Yes.
Settings.
Settings.
Stream. Nope. It's connected. All right.
Sure is.
We're banning the chat's going back in.
Settings here. That's the same settings as it was before.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine. You can just remove that source or
not
use the source. Okay. It's all right, y'all. I'll be right here. I'll be listening to what you say.
Yeah.
And
I will make a point to read out any of the questions in the chat again in voice so that anybody watching the VOD later knows what I'm reacting to. Okay. So, today I want to talk to you about making your 3D game jam experience run smoothly. And part of that is that game jams can be a lot of chaos. There are a lot of folks on your team trying to get as much possible done in the short amount of time as they can. And a lot of times that means what I've seen from game jams is artists will spend their time making some really beautiful models and textures, hand them over to a programmer on their team, say, put this in the game, and then things start to go south. And hopefully the 3D artist has not already decided to break for lunch, and they can come back around to help troubleshoot things. But I'm sad to say that at the state of the art in 2023, just exporting your stuff from Blender and hoping to import it into Unity and have everything go smoothly is not quite how it works. So I'll be going through a couple of different examples of how to solve some common problems, and hopefully you all can learn from that, have a really smooth time getting all of your models and animations and things into your game, so that when the game jam ends, you don't have the disappointing experience of having made a bunch of art that never got to be included. I think that's a really sad outcome, so we're going to try to avoid that. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to close this project. We're going to start from scratch, because that's what game jams are about. We'll make our new project. I've got Unity Hub up here. I'm just going to do the 3D core project. Some of y'all might end up doing 3D mobile or universal render pipeline or something like that, but I think the core 3D is the most common one, so that's what we're going to go with. This project will be Film Game Jam Workshop. And we'll save it to my desktop. Why not? Desktop. Create that project. So, while we're waiting for that, let's go over to Blender. I don't know exactly what everyone's level of experience here is with doing 3D art, so for this workshop I'd like to start off, assuming this is your absolute first time opening this program, and as I roll through some other examples, I'm going to hopefully show some more intermediate and advanced things that, if you are an experienced 3D artist, you'll get some tips out of that. And if you're an absolute beginner, sorry, you might not be able to follow absolutely everything here, but hopefully enough for you to get started and have a good time. So, I want to model some trees, and the first modeling technique I want to show you is modeling with primitives. So I've done here, I'm just selecting everything in my scene. I'm going to hit X to delete it, and hit OK. Because we're going to start from a totally fresh, empty scene. And we got to ask ourselves, of these primitives that we can add, there's a couple different ways we could do this. I can add from this menu over here. I can add a cube or a cone or a cylinder or a UV sphere.
What is a UV sphere?
A UV sphere is a particular way that the vertices in the sphere look, where there's like a north pole, there's a south pole, and the mesh is divided into little rectangles.
I see.
And you can also add an icosphere, and I'll show you what that one's like. It looks more like an icosahedron, like a D20. It's got a bunch of little triangular facets. So those are what those two look like. I'll just undo those. But right now we're going to be modeling with primitives, which I think is a really underrated kind of modeling. And the good news is, if you're a beginner, it's a pretty straightforward thing to get started with. There are not a lot of different tools that you need to learn how to use. Let's see. Ooh, I got a good question. Is my cursor customized? And what is that highlight detail? So I've got a couple of things going on here. I do have a add-on installed called Screencast Keys. You'll notice that's in my bottom left here. So it's showing which mouse button I'm pressing when I'm doing stuff. Hopefully that makes it easier for people to follow along. But I also selected this tool for add object. And when I've got that selected, you can see this highlight on the grid that's going to show me where that object gets added. So I can, a couple other things. I can, while I'm dragging that, hit shift, and that'll get me a square instead of a rectangle. I can hit control and, let's see, I can hit option and shift, or alt and shift. Yeah, it depends on your keyboard. I can hit alt and shift. That's going to give me not just a square, but also it's going to keep the anchor of where I first clicked as the center instead of the corner. And then after I've done that, I can drag up to set the height of the box. So that's a real quick way we can make some shapes in Blender. Like I said before, you can choose which of these primitives you want to add. It can be a cube, can be a cone, can be a cylinder. But I was going to model a couple of trees for you, or hedges or something. So for that, I'm going to use the UV sphere. And we'll go ahead and put that, I don't know, somewhere near the center. And we'll drag up, and that'll be my little hedge. A very useful tool in Blender is the tool search. I think it's called the tool search or search bar. I don't know. If you press F3, you'll bring up the search thing, and you can start typing, what do you want to do? And it'll give you suggestions of different tools and operators and things that match that. So what I want to do right now is I want to turn this from a really faceted sphere into something smooth, like an egg. So I'm going to type smooth, and what I want here is object shade smooth. That's not the only way I can get to that. I think I can also get that from the right click menu, so I can right click on that object and click shade smooth. But you know, that's the first part of this, making a tree thing. I thought maybe, to make this look like a little hedge or something, we can duplicate it. I did that with Shift D, and I'm just gonna scoot that over a little bit, something like that. Also maybe scale this up. It's a little uneven, and I can even come over here with the rotate tool and give it a little jaunty angle. So that can be a little hedge. Let's rotate this other one out. Hey, all right. Really simple first model, but it'll give us something to work with to make sure all of our export stuff is going okay, and all of our import into Unity is going okay. So one thing I am going to do, I'm going to select both of these. I'll do that left click and then shift left click. I want to join these, so I can type join here in my search box, or I can use the hotkey Control J. So that's that. We're going to come down here to materials, material properties, and we'll assign this material. So these are now one object, and they're going to both have the same material, and it's going to be, we'll call it edge. It's good to give things names, because when you move them into your Unity project, you'll know what they are and know how to find them. So I'm going to do that here as well. We'll name the object, we call it edge, and we'll give it a color. So I'm using my color picker from the materials panel. We'll turn it dark green, something like this maybe. Alright, the first thing you're going to notice is, even though I said this should be a nice dark green in Blender, it still looks gray in the viewport. And I can really quickly change that by turning on the viewport shadings. There's a couple different ways I can have this render in the viewport. I can just look at the wireframe. That's going to show me the edges. I can have it in solid view. It's going to show me the faces, but everything's gray. Or I can come over here to the material preview, the viewport shading. Let's see. I could have sworn one of these was called material preview. Okay, this one's called material preview. This one's called rendered. Rendered is going to be black right now because there are no lights in the scene. But that's alright for me right now. We'll have some lights in our Unity project when we eventually add it, so you'll be able to see. In the meantime, one other thing I'm going to change here before we get ready to export. These plants are too shiny, and I want them to be mostly not shiny. So I'm going to tweak my roughness value and my specular value. So that's looking a little better. And a couple of more things I wanted to show you. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and we'll do the first export and import, and then we'll resolve some problems because it's not going to go quite how I want it to the first time. But we'll save that here. What we'll call this file. We'll call this. I don't know, CJ, give me a theme. What kind of game are we making here?
We're making a game about a cat yelling angrily at us.
Okay.
That's like my most recent memory.
It sure is.
What, you want to make a game about toast? Do you want to make a game about pancakes?
A game about pancakes, that's real good. We have made a game about waffles already.
We have made a game about waffles before, yeah.
You know, I'm going to call this forest. I don't know. It's a plant.
Among Us.
Among Us. Among Us.
Among Us.
Yeah. Let's see. I might change my mind on what this should be called yet, but...
Quick, World of Warcraft. Right, coming
yes,
right
this
up.
World of Warcraft. Okay. Anyway, save your file. Also, save your files often. Blender these days is pretty good about not crashing. It does depend a little bit on your computer, and how many vertices you throw at it at the same time. So, anyway, Always good to save your work, though. We're going to come down here to export from our file menu, and the export choice we want is FBX. So, I'm going to go show you what this looks like if I just export it totally as is. And we'll move it into our Unity project. Our Unity project is thankfully up and running now, so here we are at our desktop. I saved this under Blender, I think, and it's called Forest. Excuse me, just that one. Drag it over here into our assets. And actually, I think it's pretty good practice and something I'm used to anyway, to put this into something called models. So we'll put it in the models folder. Alright, and you can see from the preview, one of the first kind of glitches that we'll resolve is that, you know, I could have sworn these hedges were standing up and down, and now here they are in Unity pointing left and right. Oh goodness. Comment in the chat. Take a drink every time something in Unity doesn't work as you expected the first time. Ooh, I would be...
I'll go get the issue.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thankfully I have some tea that's not going to get me too blitzed.
Yeah, that's true. What kind of stream are we running here?
Anyway, yeah, so could have sworn I had that pointing up and down, right? And here it is left and right. Interesting thing, Unity half gets this right, and I don't really understand how it only gets it half right, but as soon as I put this into my scene, you'll notice, oh, it actually is up and down. Why does it look left and right in here? Anyway, I don't have an answer to that mystery, but I can show you that once we've moved it into here, it's got this rotation in it. It's now saying X rotation is minus 78 point something. Anyway, that can cause some problems later because we might want it to be 0. Some script might try to set the transform back to rest position or something like that, and if it does, our model is going to be sideways again. So I'd like to fix this. That's going to be one of the things we'll fix. The other thing I want to fix is it's a little bit less obvious with our game just looking like blank space right now. I'll go ahead and put in a ground plane. So we'll come here to 3D object, create a plane. We'll make it start at the origin 0, 0, 0, and we'll make it, I don't know, let's see. I'll go ahead and lock the scale so it's the same in all directions. We'll make it 10 times bigger or something like that, just so we have something where we can kind of ground our models in reality here a little bit more. So my object here is floating. That's kind of the other problem. And we're going to solve both of these in Blender. The first thing I want to do is select my hedge over here again. And you can see this little orange dot in the model. That's representing what Blender thinks the center of this model is. And a really useful thing is to have that center point actually be somewhere on the ground, so that when you set the position of that object to 0, it's on the ground in your scene in Unity where you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And so I need to change what this point is. And I can do that if I come into my tools again, my search, and I need to change the center. I need to change the origin, I think it's called. So I need to put the origin to 3D cursor right now. So this little red and white gizmo here is the 3D cursor. You can move it around if you have this tool selected in Blender, and you know, wherever it is, it has a point in 3D space. So it's a useful thing to be able to set a pivot point like this for various modeling operations. But also if I sort of come back to my tools here, I can easily use that cursor as the point that I set the model center to. And so if I type in cursor to world origin, that's going to reset the cursor back to 0. And like before, I set the geometry, excuse me, I set the object center to 3D cursor. So if I export this again, this is going to be what Unity considers the center of that object, and if I put it on the ground, it should be on the ground like I want. One other thing I'm going to do here, a couple other things I'm going to do here. I'm going to hit Control A. I can apply a few things, because these are primitives that I've already scaled and rotated and things like that. But I want when I set everything to 0, set all the rotations to 0, I want it to look like this. And I can do that by choosing Apply Rotation, or Apply Scale, or I can do all. That'll do Location and Rotation and Scale. So we'll save that again. We will, I think before I re-export this and re-import this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this from my Unity scene, because we'll be bringing in a fresh copy. So I'm going to do this export again. Here we are at FBX, at the FBX export settings. One other setting I want to highlight here while we're in this file view. If I choose Apply Transform, then I can fix that thing being sideways in Unity problem. And the thing that's going on there, by the way, in our Unity project, if you take a look at this little gizmo in the corner, you can see it's got the x-axis pointing along this way, along the floor. It's got the y-axis pointing up and down, and it's got the z-axis pointing, I guess, forwards and backwards. In Blender, that's a little different. We can take a look at our gizmo, and we see that x is pointing forwards and backwards, y is pointing left and right, and z is pointing up and down. Incidentally, I think it's interesting, or I don't know, it's amusing that even though these two different programs don't agree on which way X, Y, and Z should point, they do agree on what colors they should be. X is red, and Y is green, and Z is blue. Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I have the feeling that because X, Y, and Z are in that order in the alphabet, we also decided that they should be RGB because that's the order that the color space happens to represent those colors.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. That's my guess. Right, back to Blender. Here we are. Here's our file view. I've checked the box for Apply Transform. We're going to export again. I'll just overwrite. That'll be okay. Back to our Unity scene. We're going to drag in this file once again. And hey, it's pointing up and down. That's cool. And I can drag it over here. And importantly, yeah, if I put the position to 0, then my model is sitting on the floor where I want it to be. So, hey, we solved some problems.
Nice.
So just a little quick recap on that before we get into modeling challenge number 2. Things to check before you export. Make sure that your object center is where you want it to be. Make sure that you've applied transforms to your model. Make sure that you've checked the apply transforms here in your export settings. Excuse me, apply transform singular, no S. Yeah, those 3 things. And if you're making static models like this, that should be enough to get them to import nicely into Unity. We'll be going over some other cases where you gotta do a few more things, so our checklist will grow ever longer. But yeah, before I moved on to that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about primitive modeling, or modeling with primitives. Like I said, I think it's kind of underrated modeling technique. You know, obviously this hedge I made is super simple, super basic, but you can make some stuff this way. I made a train earlier today. Here's my train.
Look at that. A fine train.
You know, this is all things that you can make using just the tools I've shown you so far, using the move, rotate, scale, and using the add shape. A couple of other things I wanted to mention for Blender newbies out there. A really common thing for once you sort of get into the, I don't know, get into the groove of using Blender. All of these tools have hotkeys. And the hotkey for moving things, it's not M for move, it's not T for translate, it's G. G for grab, I think. I think you grab things when you move them. Anyway, fits nicely on the home row if you're using a standard keyboard layout. You can also use R for rotate. You can use S for scale. And all of these accept the same modifiers after them. So I can hit G to get my grab. And then after that, if I wanted to move this just up and down, if I wanted to keep it fixed in place left and right, and just move it up and down, I can hit Z. That's going to lock it to the Z axis. I might want to do the opposite. I might want to move it left and right, but keep the height, and I can do that by hitting grab, Shift Z. That'll let me move it around on a flat plane. It's not going to move up and down at all. Can do the same thing if I rotate. If I want to rotate around the y-axis, I can hit Y after R. What else? Yeah, same for scale. I can hit scale and scale it just up and down, or I can scale it just left and right. So, useful hotkeys. I'm going to be using these a lot in our next examples of things I'm going to model. So, and let me make sure when I do that I turn my screencast keys thing back on. I just noticed I don't have it on for this Blender file, and y'all have not been able to see what I'm pressing. But hopefully the fact that I said it out loud helps. Oh, one other thing to mention about modeling. You may be wondering about this little guy.
I am wondering about that little guy.
You are now. So I said all of these shapes here are primitives. You can tell the cylinders are cylinders. You can tell the boxes are boxes. What about this guy? That guy's actually, if I remember right, a cone. But when I created the cone, let me come here to my add cone. I'll make one like that. I got these options when I do add cone for how many vertices do I want this to be. So if I set that to something like 3, I get this nice little pyramid shape. And if I set it to a really big number, I get this nice smooth round cone. So you can use that to your advantage to, I don't know, if you're modeling some beehive or something, maybe you want to create hexagonal cylinders with exactly 6 sides, and you can come here, make your primitive shapes with the right number of vertices in them. So let's go back to our forest. I'm not going to save the train. Okay. What next? In my other thing, I modeled a fence. We could do that one. It's something we can model with mostly primitives, and then I'm going to show a couple of different things we can do to zhuzh it up a little.
Zhuzh, by the way, means to pour gin on.
Yes,
This
it does.
is what my friend told me.
Alright, putting my cursor back to the world origin. What am I going to do? I'm going to take this hedge and I'm going to hide it with the H key. So that's going to... same thing you can do with this little eye icon up here in the corner. So we'll hide that while we're modeling a fence. And we'll start by putting some primitive shapes in again. I'm actually going to show you another way to do this. And that is by hitting Shift A. It'll bring up this add menu, and you can add a whole bunch of different things. Right now I want cube. So there's cube. We're going to move this, excuse me, we're going to move this up about 1 unit along the z-axis so that it's on the ground. I'm going to scale this, but not in the z-axis, so that I can make it thinner and not make it shorter. So that's my little fence post. I need another one. I'm going to hit Shift D, move that along the y-axis over to here. We'll do Shift D again, make a couple of fence slats. Or I could show you a different kind of fence than I did in the other one. I don't know. What would be fun? Can do... Let's do a picket fence kind of a thing. So it'll have more slats. And we might need some in between these two. So I'm going to select all of these guys. Not the last one, just that. I'll move that in here. Along the y-axis. Select all of these. Control J to join. And what else does a picket fence need? It does need, let's see. I didn't join these yet. Why didn't I join these? Control J. There we go. Alright. What do we need? We need another cube. And we need it to run horizontally along this fence. So we'll scale this. I can also mess with my view here, so see me doing that a little. Scale this along just the y-axis. We need to scale this down, but not on the y-axis, so we'll do Shift Y. Make it nice and skinny. And something like that. Okay. And we'll move these out to here. I want to make them skinnier. These overlap just a little. Alright, so we got a fence. Something's going on in my OBS over here. What's that? Who's that?
That was me.
Oh, okay.
You can just hit back.
Hit back. Hit.
Hide for yourself.
Hide for yourself.
There you go.
There we go. Alright, cool. We'll select all these, join them again. And what else? I want to show you a couple of things. I kind of think, you know, fun thing for especially quirky indie game kinds of things, but also just 3D art in general. I feel like it's easy to make 3D art that looks a little sterile, that looks too perfect, and that's not really how things look in the real world most of the time. I think we need to mess up this fence a little. So now I'm here in edit mode because I'm going to tweak these vertices. Those are the little points the mesh is made out of. And what I'm going to do is maybe we'll rotate this slat a little bit. rotate this other one. I can select all the things connected to this with the L key. Rotate that along the x-axis. Maybe a couple of these are a little bit taller than the others. Maybe some of these are not truly square either. We can make this a little bit of a wedge by just scaling that up. In fact, if anything, here I'm probably still being too tame with these edits. Maybe we gotta rough it up a little bit more. Let's add some cuts. I did Control R to add in some loop cuts. We'll just do a couple like that. I'm gonna select this edge ring, and we'll rough this fence up some more. And don't forget to do the bottom one too. So something like that. One other thing I want to do with everything here, I'm going to select all with A. Go and grab and just sink this a little bit under the floor in the Z-axis. I think that's a nice thing to do when you have objects like fences that are supposed to be buried in the ground anyway. It'll just you know, it'll make that look more right in the final game. So, all right, here's our less perfect fence. And what else do we want to do to this? You know, maybe that's it. As far as modeling, anyway. No, let's see. One other thing I wanted to show you for modeling is that right now we've got very perfect 90-degree, very CG, very, I don't know, very basic looking corners, and most things in the real world don't have corners that sharp. And we can fix that using the bevel tool. So I'm going to hit Control B for bevel. And if I drag this, you can see I'm adding some more geometry to these and making them a little more round. So I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to, let's see, how do I get this to be more the profile that I want? I think it looks the wrong way because I didn't apply my transforms yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I hit Tab to exit edit mode and come back to object mode. Go and apply all the transforms. Gonna come back, gonna bevel again. That looks more like what I was expecting. Alright. So now we have these kind of rounded off corners. And I think that's gonna look a lot better. So, we gotta give it some material. Let's do that. Let's give it, we'll call it fence underscore wood. Name your stuff. I haven't been naming my stuff yet. I'm gonna come back in and name it. And I think it's good to have the names of materials to be names that sound like materials, like this is a fence, it's made out of wood, it'll be called something underscore wood. But I also think having that object name in there really helps later when we're over here in the Unity Inspector and there's 5 different things all called wood and we don't know which one's which. So now we'll know this belongs to the fence. Alright. I'm going to give this a... I'm actually not going to give this a base color. We'll come back to that in just a sec. But I am going to make this less shiny again, so we'll keep a little bit of specular on this. I think it's useful for wood to be a little bit shiny, but not super shiny. And what else did I want to change here? I want to change the roughness. I want it to be pretty rough. 90% or so. You can eyeball it. Alright, so what I want to do next is come over here to UV editing. So a common thing for 3D models, if you want extra detail, is to paint it on as a texture. And we're going to do that with this fence. All of these have a different place in the UV map over here right now. And by default, this is where Unity thinks that things that were previously cubes should be. They're kind of in this unwrapped cube T pattern thing. But we would like these to be separate. So I'm going to come here, hit my U key for UV mapping objects. We'll do cube projection. And what else? I want to make sure these are not overlapping each other in this texture space here so that we can paint them different colors. And I can do that with, is it in my right click menu? I'm looking for an option called pack texture. Pack islands. UV pack islands. Alright. There we go. Alright, so these vertices now all have a different space on the texture map. Should I talk about texture maps? What is this thing going on over here? This is like if you wanted to make a globe. It's a sphere, and the 2D version of that, just the map, has to be projected onto that sphere somehow. So that means two things. One, it means that some of the places on the 2D version of this map are going to be distorted compared to the 3D one. Going to be stretched a little bit. And there's also going to be some seams somewhere. You can't wrap a sheet of paper around a 3D sphere without it having edges somewhere. So, or without your paper being cut somewhere. Anyway, we're doing the same thing with that, but we're not wrapping it onto a sphere, we're wrapping it onto this weird fence shape that I just made. Okay. So we've got this UV thing set up. That means I can come up here to texture paint. We're going to paint this fence. But before I do that, I need to create a new image that we can paint onto. We'll call this fence. And I'm going to set that up in my material here. So that's why I didn't come to this base color before. I'm going to set it to this image. So I'll click on that little dot, come over here to image texture, and I'm going to pick this fence image that I just created. So now our fence is all black because of our texture over here is all black. But that means we can paint on it. And I'm going to make a, I don't know, nice pine wood looking fence here or something. I don't know. Pick a color. That looks okay. I'll go ahead and add that to my color palette so I can come back to it later. And I'm going to paint that. Let's just start with the base coat where we fill, excuse me. I need to select that color. Alright. I'll fill everything with that color, so that's our fence right now. Does that look like a good base? Maybe a little yellower. Something like that. Alright. That's our color. And we'll use this as my sort of wood grain color over here. So anyway, we're here in our texture paint, and we can pick the brush option, and we can just start painting on this fence. If I click and drag, it's now going to put a line of whatever color I have in my palette onto that part of the model. But I want to paint something looking like wood grains, so we'll do something smaller. Make my brush maybe something like 15 pixels, 10. Yeah. Let me just paint on some wood grain. Yeah, I'm being pretty rough and sloppy here. That's okay.
It looks pretty good, though.
No one's gonna call me on it. Once this is in the game, it's probably not the most eye-catching asset in our whole scene anyway.
Now I'm imagining someone just staring at the lines.
And they're just gonna stare at this fence and be like, that doesn't look like wood. Be like, I don't know what you want from me. It's a short workshop, everybody. Paint some bigger wood grains, paint some smaller wood grains. Maybe this one's got a knot in it. I'll have to give a little dot here and sort of trace around that. I'm gonna do the rest of this fence really fast so we can move on to the next thing. You know, don't need to watch me paint a fence for 30 minutes. Board. We'll put some wood grains on this one too. Alright. Close enough.
Looks good.
Okay. Like I said before, saving your work is important. That goes as well for all of your image textures that you've just painted. And one way you can make this, one way that you can save this is by pressing the pack button. That's a useful way to, it's going to tell Blender to save this file inside the Blender file itself. And that way, if you pass your Blender file off to another computer, they will also have the texture nicely on their model. And they won't have to load that separately from disk. So I'm going to save this file. We're going to do this fence export. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. While I'm on the fence. Hey.
While you're on the fence.
I got him. Okay. You know, I wanted to talk about this with the. Let's see. I don't want my screencast keys right now. I want item. That's what I want. Okay. So this goes for the hedge model as well, and really anything you model that you're going to put into that you're going to add to the same scene eventually. I should really be thinking about how big things are in comparison to other things. So right now, according to my Blender file, this fence is 2.1 meters tall, which is maybe a little tall for a fence. It's not unrespectable, but I think I want this to be more like a kind of chest height, waist height fence, somewhere in between there. And so I probably want this to be more like 150 centimeters, maybe, something like that. So I'm going to scale this down to about there-ish. Now it is 1.5 meters tall. So 3 meters long and 2.2 meters deep, which is also a pretty chunky fence, but it's stylized art. I think we can get away with that.
A chunky chunky fence.
Yeah.
A chunky boy.
The other thing I want to do is right now my object center is here, kind of where that leftmost fence post is. We'll go ahead and put it in the middle. So I'm going to do that right now by going into edit mode, grabbing everything, sliding it along Y to there-ish. Whatever looks like the center. I'll say that looks centered enough for me. Okay, so there's our fence. We'll save once again, and I'm going to export. Let's see, this time I'm going to do limit to selected objects. So this is going to just export the fence, not also the hedge. Fence. We'll call it fence. And other things to check. I need to apply transform. Alright, checklist. Did we cover all the things? Our fence has the median point, the center point where we want it. It's about the right scale. We applied our transform. We check the apply transform again in our export settings. Let's go.
Nice.
And now I'm going to come back to my Unity project. Let's put in our fence. Here's my guy. Here is fence. Fence is the one we want. I'll put it there. Put it in our scene. And almost like I planned this, oh no, another thing has gone wrong. What do I do?
How could this have happened?
How could this have happened? So, I told you earlier that it's very convenient to pack your textures inside a Blender, and it is. I do stand by that. I think it's a good practice for while you're modeling. It doesn't work for exporting, because now Unity does not know where this texture is. And how we can fix that is we can come back to our Blender file. We'll go back over to our texture paint. We'll come back over to image, and we will save. You can, let's see, that says pack to memory. That's not what I want. I want to unpack image, and that's this little icon here next to the file name. Unpack the use file from current directory. Now I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to export again. And everything should be still set up in the scene. Okay, we have selected objects checked, we have apply transform checked, we're exporting this fence. We're going to come back over to, one of these is my Unity file, there it is. We're going to get rid of this old fence. Going to bring in that new fence. And you'll see, that doesn't look any better. Matt, you said this was going to fix things. Right now, how could this have happened? Yeah, so right now, our fence has, let's see, our fence has a reference to a external file that's got the texture. It should be in this folder here called textures. And unfortunately, I think in my other example that I set up for this, I already had a texture named fence, so it did not overwrite it. And I have to save this as something else, but we'll go ahead. We'll call this fence 2. Alright, so I need to save this as fence 2. I don't want to open image, I want to save image. Please save the image. Save as. That's what I want. Alright, save as. I'm going to save as fence 2. Alright, and over here in my material panels, it's using fence 2, which is what we want. So, now we'll do our export. We'll export our fence. We'll import our fence. And one more thing we're going to do. We're also going to import our fence texture. I'm going to make this textures folder. If you're doing this, you can also copy the textures folder that's should be wherever you saved your Blender file, in the same directory there. I'm not going to do that because this has a whole bunch of other textures that I made earlier. So we'll just copy the one we need right now, which is fence 2. And now you'll see I can put my fence in, and it's nicely painted, just like I wanted. Okay. One other thing I wanted to say about Unity materials, and for that we'll need another model. CJ, what's something made out of metal?
Made out of metal.
Yep.
A D20.
D20 could be made out of metal, sure.
Glasses can be made out of metal. A sword could be made out of metal.
All right, let's go. Let's go sword. That seems like a thing that games have, right? Milk can. Milk can's a good one. Somebody in the chat.
Oh, milk can.
All right, we'll do milk can. Why not? Okay, I'm gonna come back to my modeling view over here. I'm gonna hide that fence again. I'm gonna make a milk can. Somebody let me know about how big is a milk can. I feel like it should be maybe 50 centimeters across. Oh, that's radius. So half of that, 0.25 meters. That might be a milk can.
Yeah, it goes well with the fence.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me, I had a circle. I don't want a circle, I want a cylinder. Give me a cylinder, please. Here we are. Shift A, cylinder. And the radius is going to be, like I said, 0.25 meters. Maybe that's about the right size. How tall is a milk can?
What, a third of a meter?
Third of a meter? 30 centimeters. Does that look right? That's a little squat. Maybe
bigger.
Maybe I need to make the thing narrower, or who knows.
Right? Or like how big is it, like a milk canister? Or is
I was thinking big ol',
okay.
5-gallon kind of thing.
So then maybe...
For that more like 80 centimeters?
Yeah,
like
try that.
0.8 meters. Alright, that can be a milk can. Why not? Edit mode. We'll move this up so it's sitting on the ground. We'll do a couple extrusions. So first, I'm going to select my faces. Let's put me in face select mode. We'll move this down. Let's see, move that down to about there-ish. We will extrude up. About there-ish. Scale that in. Extrude up again. Extrude again. Scale out. Extrude again. And there's our milk canister, right? What else can we do with this? We can...
Oh, yes.
I'll adjust. Give us some better proportions.
Josiah was asking about using a reference image.
Reference image. Ooh, yeah. That's a really good way to model things. Why don't we go do that? Let's come up with milk can. What do you got for me, Google Images? You got something like this. Something like that. If I can find one that's a nice side-on view, that'll be perfect for modeling, because I can match stuff up to my image, and it will, in my 3D view, and it'll be all the right dimensions. But failing that, we can also just have a reference image off to the side here. And that's good, because I think Blender has a really fancy way to import reference images so that they show up in your 3D view, but I don't actually know how to do that anymore. I'm going to have to look it up, so we'll save that for later, or later in the stream, or y'all can look it up on your own, I don't know. Anyway, let's see. So this has got this nice, it's got the neck there like I have. It's got this nice curve section in the middle. It's also got a little extra detail line there, maybe. So let's go ahead and select this ring here. I'm going to bevel just this. And we'll give it a couple extra lines here. Give that nice curve. What else? I'm going to make some... Oh, I'm going to bevel the bottom here too. I think that's important. That it's not a perfectly flat bottom. Be something like that. And then I'm going to come in, add a couple more loop cuts with Control R. And if I put a third one in between these two, I now have the ability to scale this in and make that nice little detail line. So, how do we do this? Look like a good milk can yet? Maybe that neck is.
What was the command for that?
For the bevel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so to bevel, I can select what I want to bevel and do Control B. I'll make this nice bevel here. I can use the mouse wheel to make it more detailed, more or less bevel. I just noticed, are my screencast keys not showing up anymore? They were. Show my screencast keys. Let me type some stuff. Nope, no good. Keys have gone. Well, let's see. Scale that in. All right. Oh yeah. So that's Control B is how I did that bevel. The other thing I do think is useful is when you want to add little detail cuts like this, using a couple ways you can do that. In this case, I could just scale using the S key. But in some cases, if I have, let's say I wanted to add some detail to this part. One way I could do that is hitting Alt S, and that'll let me move this in or out along the vertex normals. So the vector that points from that vertex into out towards the outside world or in towards the center of the model. So I can do that little scale in and out kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, we got a milk can. That was important because I want to show you something about metal objects in Unity. So I'm going to tell this to shade smooth. There we go. And there's also probably a good point to show off one other Blender thing. Sometimes shading, turning on smooth shading gives you these kind of weird, I don't know, kind of weird looking surface here. It's not really how I think this milk can should look. And that's because all of these vertices are being treated as if they flow smoothly into the next one. And some of these don't really work like that. Like this corner here is actually sharp, and I kind of want it to look sharp on my model. And so what I can do, there are a few ways to do this in Blender. My favorite is to use the edge split modifier. So if I'm here in my properties tab over here, and I click on modifiers, I can now add it here, edge split. And that's a really quick way to clean things up. It's going to use this parameter here, this 30 degrees. Anything that's sharper than 30 degrees is going to look nice and sharp in that model. Anything that's smaller than 30 degrees is going to be nice and smooth. So I still have this nice smooth curve coming across the milk jug here, and I have this nice sharp corner at the top. Alright. Name your things. This is milk can. I don't want to call it a milk jug. That
Milky Boy.
Sounds like it should be plastic or glass or something. Milk can, that's the thing that's made out of metal. We want to add material. Call this milk can. What's the name of this? I could just call it metal. I think maybe it's probably a steel can.
Steel drum?
Steel drum. Are milk cans made out of steel or aluminum? Somebody knows. I don't. I'm going to call it steel. We're going to pretend that's true, even if it's not. And a real good way for me to make this look metal is using this metallic parameter. aptly named. For things that are pure metals, you can usually set it somewhere 90% in that range and get nice results. So we're going to do that. I'm also going to turn the roughness way down so we have this nice sheen. Alright, I'm going to save that. And
it's nice and shiny.
We're going to export this. Let's see, before I do that, I want to double check if this is... screencast keys are no good. Alright. I wanted item properties. This is 1 meter tall. Is that about how tall a milk can should be? I feel like that is too tall.
It's about as tall as like my shoulder to my...
Let's scale this in just a little bit. Maybe
a little bit weird.
70 centimeters. Seems okay. Alright. And we're going to export this. So, this is not a fence, this is a milk can. I feel like it would look more like a milk can with a handle. Maybe we'll get there if there's time. Anyway, we're going to import this back from our blender here. I should have a milk can file. I'm going to put it into my models folder. Here it is. And something that you'll notice, I think is kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is that if we look at our material import settings over here, let's see, model, where do we have materials? Not going to show us. Well, if I look at my milk can material over here, you'll see the way that Unity does materials, it's got this property called albedo. That's like the base color, essentially, of something. And that's what we're using with this fence over here. And we have it mapped to that texture. For this, we have an albedo that's this kind of gray. Unity has this metallic parameter. Blender has this metallic parameter. And I'm sad to say, Unity does not import the metallic parameter from Blender, even though they're both named the same thing. There is a little extra manual work that unfortunately we have to do. What we have to do is we have to come to our import settings, we have to select this materials tab, we have to hit the extract materials button. And before I do that, I'm going to make sure I have a materials folder to extract it into. Materials. There we go. Alright, back to our milk can. Extract materials. We're going to put that in our materials folder. And now, if we come over here to materials, there's our milk can steel material like we had in Blender. And usually, the good news is you can pretty much set the same value here and get a pretty similar result. And the bad news is you have to do that extra work twice. So that's how to import metallic materials. Alright, we are a little bit past our halfway point. I think this is a good point for a little break, because I need one. And y'all can get up and stretch too. We'll be back in 5 minutes at 8:25.
Excellent.
Alright, folks. I'm going to wait about another minute. Wait for everybody to come on back from the break.
How is everyone doing tonight? I hope you're all Genki. The cat certainly is.
Cat is Genki.
The cat is Genki, yes.
Alright. I gotta double check my agenda. What else am I gonna... What else are we gonna make in Blender today? There we go, yeah. I wanted to model some grass for you. It's a very easy model to make, but it's gonna shake out a few other problems with importing, so I think it's a good case study. Okay. Let's get back into it. One more model. I always say that. Say like it's just gonna be one more. Probably still do a couple more. However time goes, yeah.
All
right.
models.
I'm gonna model this plane. I'm gonna model this plane starting with the grass. I'm gonna model this grass starting with a plane. That's the one. So I've added my plane. It's 2 meters. That's too big, but we'll fix that. I'm going into edit mode, rotating this along the x-axis, so it's pointing up and down, and we'll just scale it down to something smaller. That'll work. Go into our front view. Okay, so we'll put this on the ground.
I put it on the ground. It's a very old reference.
It sure is. All right. So I'm just gonna move this up in the air. I'll make it taper a little. No, we'll deal with the taper in a sec. All right. First, I need more vertices. I'm gonna make this nice and bendy. And how I'm gonna do that? Using my proportional editing tool. That's a great tool in Blender. You can access it with this little icon up here. I think the hotkey for it is O. O to turn it on and off.
Oh.
Oh. And you can play around with different kinds of fall off. I'll show you what that means in just a sec. For right now, I'm going to set it to sharp. So, I'm going to grab this piece here. And when I do, all the other vertices are going to kind of follow it around. I can use my mouse wheel to make that effect bigger and smaller. So right now I'm gonna do something like that. That looks like a nice little bendy grass. And we'll also scale that down so it has a nice taper. But we just need to scale along the x direction, so we'll do that. Down to a nice point. Almost a point anyway. So that's my grass. Keep it real simple. I'm going to tell it to shade smooth. I'm going to add a new material for it. We'll call this grass. We'll give it a base color, a nice bright green. That looks like a good grass green.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Export. Let's see. Let me double check all my things before we export. How tall is this grass? This is 10 centimeters. Is that right? No, this is 80 centimeters.
It's pretty
That's
long grass.
That's real tall grass. All right, we'll make that more like. What's a good height for grass? Maybe around 5 centimeters might give, but maybe a little big. I think realistically, blade of grass might be more like 5 centimeters. For our game, we might want it to show up a little bigger on the screen, so we'll go ahead and make it 15 centimeters. We'll try that. Okay. And save that. Our origin point's right at the bottom where we want it to be. Our grass is a respectable size.
A respectable grass.
Respectable grass. we're not going to export it as milk can, we're going to export it as grass. Alright, and selected objects, yep, that's fine. We've got our apply transform still. Let's go export. And let's come back to our Unity project. Bring in that grass model. There it is. Just a single blade of grass. And you'll notice one of the things that differs between Blender and Unity. In Blender, I can see this grass. I can even rotate all the way around it, and I can see it from the other side too. Not so in Unity. In my Unity project, I can see the grass from this side, and once I go around the other side, it's disappeared. And sometimes that's a useful feature for your models to have, like if we had a room or something, then, or like a building, maybe you'd want people to be able to see it from the outside, but if their camera accidentally clipped inside, you know, you wouldn't necessarily need to draw the other side of the building. It's a possibility. Or with a room, you probably don't want to draw the fourth wall of the room, so to speak. You know, if it's like a the player character is inside the room, and your camera might still be somewhere outside the room, but you want it to be able to look in. So I don't know. It can be useful the way that Unity draws these meshes only from the front side. But for our grass, that's not what we want. We want it to be able to draw from the front side, and we also want it to draw from the back side. And so we're going to have to fix that in our Blender file. I'm going to come into edit mode. I'm going to select everything. We're going to make a copy. So we'll have one copy that faces forward, and we'll have one copy that faces backward. And that way, whichever side you're on in Unity, you'll be able to see the grass. So how do I get this to be the other side? I do that by setting the normal direction. So something that all 3D modeling programs and things that handle 3D models have is this concept of a normal vector. It's the one that points, like if you shot a Nerf dart at something and it stuck to the surface, that little stem of the Nerf dart would be pointing along the normal. So right now, this mesh has normals that only point this way. And I'm going to hit, I think the hotkey for this is Alt-N. It is. If you don't remember that, and you need to find it by the search, what you're looking for is flip normals. So, I can also, in my viewport overlays, tell Blender to show me the normals. So if I turn this on, now there's these little Nerf darts pointing this way and pointing that way. And that's what we need for Unity. You'll see before, if I just Control Z, you know, if I didn't duplicate this blade of grass so that I can have one point the other way, all of the normals are currently pointing just towards the front side. So we'll Control Shift Z, redo that. Now I've got some pointing this way and I've got some pointing that way. And that's what I need for this grass to show up right. Ooh, that's a good question. Alright, somebody mentioned I like to use the solidify modifier in this case. And that's a totally valid solution too. So Blender has this nifty thing over here in the modifiers tab. We can add one, solidify. That's going to make this grass not just a flat sheet of paper anymore. It's going to give it some thickness. And that's also enough to make it show up right in Unity. So take your pick between either of these solutions, whichever one suits you best. But for right now, I've got my double-sided sheet of paper here, and that's what I'm going to export. So I'm going to turn that overlay off again because I think it's a little distracting. Okay. Saved our Blender file. We're exporting our grass again. Export FBX. we're going to come back to our Unity project. We're going to delete the grass because we're going to re-import it. Delete that one too. Here we go. New blade of grass. And now we have fixed the normals problem. You can see the grass from this side, you can see the grass from that side. Just like we wanted. We got 30 minutes left in the stream, just about. I have a couple other examples prepared. I don't know if I'll have time for both of them. I don't mind sticking around after this, but I think for folks that might have someplace to be after this, I will ask anyway. What would be more interesting to see first? I can show you animation importing, or I can go through an example of importing a file, like a Blender file from BlendSwap, something downloaded off the internet. Because I think that's a common thing to do for game jams as well, is to use at least some borrowed assets, shall we say, and knowing how to handle some of those cases can be good too. So if you've got an opinion on that, let me know in the chat. If you don't have an opinion on that, I'm going to ask CJ. Hey, CJ.
Do what now?
Yeah, I'm wondering what to show next, just in case there's not time for folks sticking around. We got one vote for animations from Pseudostars. Pseudostars, thank you for letting me know. And I think I'll go ahead and do that next. Yeah. And hopefully if folks are interested in other stuff, they'll either be able to stick around or find me at the game jam.
That's
I'll
true,
also be happy to walk you through some of that there. So.
Yep.
All right. Animations, yeah. So, knowing this is going to be kind of a fair amount of work with all of doing the animation workflow thing. What I want to do is kind of Julia Childs this somewhat, if you know what I mean. Here's the version I baked earlier. So we're gonna skip ahead to once you've already got your Blender model animated, and you want to get it into Unity. I can show you some of that. Maybe real quick, I'll at least talk you through some of the animation process. But I can go over to my bunny file. I'll save that for closing.
Bunny.blend.
Yep. So this is my bunny that I made earlier. It's mostly just a sphere that I distorted. I also gave it a little nose.
He's self-conscious about being a sphere that you just distorted.
Yeah. It's a good bunny.
He's a good bunny.
Yeah. And kind of like I showed you with the blades of grass, that's the same technique I used for modeling these ears. I think I may have also given these a solidify modifier. Is that true? I might have. I also probably applied it if I did. I don't know. Anyway, you can model this bunny using most of the techniques that I showed you already. The next bit you'll need to do is create an armature. So an armature is this little set of bones that we can use to kind of puppeteer this object around. Because if we look at the actual geometry of this, there's a lot of points. If we had to tell every single one of these points where to go in the next animation, it would be very unwieldy. What we can do instead is, let's see, I'll go ahead and add another one here. We'll add an armature. You can't see it because it's behind some things. Alright, let me do this tutorial better. Oh, my screencast keys are back. That's cool. Was not expecting that, but alright. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to hit H to hide it. I'm going to create a new armature with Shift A, armature. So I've got this little bone thing. And if I tab into edit mode, I can also make that more bones. We can even make something looking like a little person if we want. Let's see. Move everything to here. Yeah, that could be my bones for my character. But the point of doing this is to get all of your bones in your armature to line up nicely with things you want to move in your mesh. So I'm gonna get rid of that, whatever I just made there. Who knows? We're gonna hide. We'll do the wireframe view for now, I think. And I want to show this armature again. So I've got one bone here that kind of lines up with where the bunny's head is. I've got a couple bones for each of the ears. I've got this one here for the body, the main bit. And let's see, turn that wireframe back into something we can see. Okay. The next bit after you've got that is to bind your armature to your mesh. What do I mean by that? You've got the skeleton, you've got this mesh, and you need to let Blender know which parts of the mesh should move when you move the armature. And if I go into weight painting mode, I can do Control Tab to get this menu. I can see how the different parts of this mesh are going to respond to this armature. So let's see.
God, the eyes are very scary.
Oh yeah, when it's the red eyes. Yeah. So when I've got this bone selected, I've got Blender set up to anything in red here is going to move, anything in blue is not going to move, anything that's kind of in the rainbow between is going to move a little bit. And that means I can go ahead and pose this bone and the mesh will come along for the ride. So that's how to animate things with armatures. The other bit of manual work that takes a little while and is why I'm kind of just glossing over it for this this workshop, because I don't want to be here all night. In order to get these things properly set up, I don't know what to call it, properly bound, shall we say, you've got to paint in these colors. So I could unpaint this and it's gonna no longer know where to put these, so it's just gonna put them back to where they used to be, right? That's where this ear originally was. Because I have it painted red, it knows to follow this bone, and that's all of these color associations are something that you have to set up manually. There are some shortcuts you can take to get at least a good starting point. There's usually some manual work involved, though. It's not a exact process. So once that's all set up, you can come over here to animation. When you're working on animations for a game, my suggestion is always to come to the action editor, and that's going to give you the ability to have different sets of animations. So I've got two for this bunny right now. I've got one called Hop, which looks like, let me make sure this has the right end time, and after about 40. Yeah. That's what my Hop looks like. And I've also got an idle. That's what idle looks like. It's boring. It's not doing anything. You could have a more interesting idle pose or idle animation loop or something, where your character shuffles around or wiggles their nose or, something cute. But making sure that you at least have something for an idle state is very useful because you'll want to reference that from your game code. So that's why I've gone ahead and created this idle one, even though it's a single keyframe. It's very boring. So, let's go ahead and import this into our game. Oh, what else? Should I talk about keyframing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about keyframing a little bit. So I think the best way to keyframe stuff in Blender, and I'll go ahead and create a, we'll use our idle pose as a reference, create a new one. I'll call this hop 2 or something, just to show you the ideas behind how to keyframe stuff. I think it's useful to turn on this auto keying. That's a very speed up your workflow kind of tip. I also need to set a keying set. So what parameters am I going to be animating? And right now I'm going to be animating the locations and rotations of things, specifically the armature bones. And I need to come into pose mode so I can mess with those. Let's not call this hop. Let's call this wiggle or something. I don't know. We'll make something new. So in order to create keyframes, I can scrub the playhead forward and backward here. I'm just using the arrow keys to move through the frames one at a time. I can go ahead and move this bone to make the bunny move on that keyframe. We'll go somewhere there. Move forward a couple more frames. Move it over here. Move forward a couple frames. Maybe there-ish. And now I will Alt-G. It's going to reset that back to its rest position. So that's what I've got for this little wiggle animation, and now we can play through it, and the bunny just does a little wiggle.
Look at him. Man, I could really watch that all day. You showed me the bunny hop before. I really, I could.
Let's see. It's kind of a sassy wiggle.
It is a sassy wiggle.
I like it. Alright, we'll do one more keyframe. We'll do over here, and then maybe just end this after 30 frames. 30, and we'll end again by going back to rest. So maybe move some of these keyframes around. They seem a little too unevenly spaced. Anyway, I could tweak that all day. It's fun. But what I want to show you is how to put this into Unity. So we're going to select our armature. We're going to select our bunny mesh. We're going to export. I'm going to also make sure that my texture comes along. So I showed you before, you need to make sure that your thing is saved as a file. Mine is, I can tell, because it has this folder icon instead of the crate icon, so that means it's not packed. Anyway, we're going to export. We're going to export FBX. And something new this time. And this kind of applies to armatures. It doesn't apply to other things. I don't really know why, but I think Blender uses a different convention for which axis bones point along as well. I don't know. Anyway, in order to make sure our armature comes in the right way, I need the supply transform, but I also need to set the forward to Y forward. That's going to set Z up. So Y forward, Z up. That's what I need for this armature. We're going to export as bunny 2, because I already have a bunny that I was using for the other game. I don't know. Do that. And bring this in. So first I need to make sure I've got the
Right.
22 model here. Boop. That's going to come in, and you'll see it's ginormous. So I obviously didn't make sure I had the right scale for this bunny, but we'll leave it be for now. And we'll, let's see, I wanted this folder. Let's make sure that we have that bunny texture in here too. Copy that over to my textures. So now it's got all the colors where they need to be. We can see, we'll do extract materials again. We'll do that, put those in our materials folder. You can see some new things over here in our import settings. We now have animation, and we've got one for each of those animations we had before. We got hop, we got idle, we got wiggle. Weird difference, I don't know why, it doesn't particularly matter. I suggest you just ignore it, but for whatever reason Blender starts on frame 1 and goes to frame 40. Unity decides instead to start on frame 0 and go to 39. Don't worry, it's the same number of frames. It'll all work out in the end.
It's weird, but okay.
Yeah. Another thing I need to do in order to start using these animations in my project, I need to come over here to Rig. I need to create avatar. Let's see. There's a thing called avatar definition, and I want to create one from this model. We'll apply. We'll do that. So now I have this bunny. It has an avatar, and that's what I need in order to start animating it. I also need an animator controller. So I'll go ahead and create one of those, and you can see how that works. Animator controller, that's what we want. And we'll call this bunny animator. Bunny animator controller. Assign that over here in my inspector.
Very big bun.
Yeah. Kaiju bun.
Kaiju bun.
So you know, all that's set up, but I need to make sure my camera is on my bunny. Where's that camera? It's over there. Let's see where this kaiju bun is. Turn that camera around. Swing it on around 180 degrees. That'll do. Or somewhere around there. Yeah. And we'll tweak that rotation here too, so it's alright. So we can see our bunny. We can also see how big it is. So I can go ahead and play my game and we can see the bunny, but we're not actually going to see it animate. And that's because in order to actually start using these animations, we need to make some changes in that animation controller over here. So I'm going to double click that over here. Unity has this nifty little state machine window thingy, but right now it doesn't have any animations in it, it's just empty. I can populate it with my bunny animations by coming over to this model. I'm going to click that arrow to expand, and we see there's all of these animation clip assets that it has nicely imported. I'm going to drag those into my controller window. So if I play this again, our bunny's hopping.
Look at that.
It hopped once anyway. Hopped once when we played the game. If we want this to do, I don't know, more useful behavior, we want this to act like it's something that you can control as the player. I can show you how to set some of that up. We're going to have the entry scene, and this is why I told you it's important to have an idle. We're going to connect the entry scene to the idle scene. I'm going to delete this connection. Let's see.
Question. We have a question in the chat.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, check it out.
Okay.
And read it out for folks.
Ooh, alright. I have a newbie question. I was having an issue yesterday in my animation thing. For my example, there was a book. I wanted to make it close and open. The max was 180 degrees, but between any keyframe on my animation, it starts to get crazy and move in circles. Ooh, alright. That is a very interesting question. Well, if you come to the game jam, I'd be happy to take a look at your source files and maybe we can debug it from there. Mm-hmm. One thing I can say happens sometimes when you're dealing with animations. It's a problem called gimbal lock. Sometimes that's the thing you run into. And what's happening there is there's a couple of different ways to keyframe rotations in 3D. One is to use a set of angles, so you can tell it how much to rotate around the x-axis, how much to rotate around the y-axis, how much to rotate around the z-axis, for example. And with that setup, anytime that you want to rotate past the North Pole of the globe, so to speak, there's not enough information in just those 3 numbers to tell how to do that. What's the right direction to go? So you can get in the situation where the place you're starting and the place you want to end up at, to you, seem like they should have a perfectly smooth and obvious way to get there. But to the software, it takes a roundabout path and it gets stuck and it doesn't figure it out. Something that usually helps in that case in Blender is making sure that you have your rotations keyed as quaternions. So that's going to give it a 4th number instead of just 3. And that makes the math a little bit less prone to having that error. It also makes it a lot less user-friendly, so to speak. It's not very straightforward to understand what those numbers are going to do if you're typing them in directly or if you're keyframing them directly. So that's what I think might have been going on there. I couldn't say for sure. Yeah. Something else I wanted to point you all to as far as resources go. There is a community on Reddit called Blender Help. And it's a really great place to ask all of your questions, and you can post your a example of your file with your post, and usually helpful people will come by and drop some advice. So if you're open to sharing your source files with people, that would be something else I would suggest. Good question, by the way. Yeah. Alright. I wanted to show you this state machine with animations thingy. So, earlier we saw that hop animation and it ran just once and then stopped. What we can do is we can set up this state machine to tell Unity which animation to play and when. So right now I'm going to have this idle one be our start. I can do that by doing right-click. Let's see. Right-click and set as default layer state. So that's grayed out now because it already is the default state. But if I set it over here to wiggle, I can set it back to idle. So the other thing I want to do is I want to be able to hop on command. So we'll have idle connect to hop, make this transition, and we're going to have hop go back to idle. So after you're done hopping, you'll be back at the idle state. But what I want this transition to work is it's not just going to go from idle to hop and back, because then it's just going to keep going around this loop forever. It's only going to go from idle to hop when we press the spacebar, for example. So I can do that. Let's see. By selecting this transition, it's created a transition from idle to hop, and it now has the name idle bunny armature idle arrow bunny armature hop. That's an okay name. We'll leave it like that. But I need to give it a condition, so I'm going to add a condition here, and that means I'm going to also need to create a parameter. So I'm going to create one here. We'll create a trigger parameter. So that's something that's going to happen when you tell it to, just once. There are other kinds of parameters that you can use. For example, if we had a state that we wanted the bunny to stay in while it was falling, if we were making a platformer or something, we might make that a bool parameter and have one called isFalling. But right now I have a trigger. I'm going to call this trigger hop. That's what it's going to do. And in order to make sure that we can tell the bunny to hop when we want to, we need to add a new script. So this is going to be, make a new script here, new C# script, bunny controller. That's what we'll call it. Okay. Open. It does not want to open. How do I get this to open in my code editor? Here's my code editor. It's got my workshop notes. Can I drag it here? Can I show an explorer? That might work. Alright. I'm going to open this manually. Maybe we'll do it this way. Open file. It's great that there are so many different ways to accomplish the same result. That way, when none of them work. Alright, here's my workshop. I have assets. I have this bunny controller. Dot. CS. Alright. So, first thing I'm going to need. I'm going to need to reference that avatar that I made. Is that right? I need to reference the animator. So I'm going to have something called animator, and it has the type animator. And in my update, I want to check if the user is pressing the spacebar. Here's my little code to do that. We're going to check input.getKey, and we're going to pass it in spacebar as a parameter, keycode.space. And if so, we want to tell the animator to run the trigger for hop. And more than likely I've made a bug somewhere in the script, so we'll debug it in just a second. We'll see. Animator does not contain a definition for set trigger. I maybe called that the wrong thing. Let's go to our reference docs. Unity reference. Here's my scripting API. I want to search for animator, because that is the name of the thing I'm using. And it should have something called trigger, or set trigger, or something like that. There it is, set trigger. I think I did name it the right thing. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't name it with a capital S, which is important. It is capital S set trigger. So we will try that. We'll see if that can reload. Go back to our scene here. So our bunny needs to have this script on it. There it is. And that script needs to have a reference to the animator. So now bunny knows how to use the animations when you press the spacebar. Hopefully. We'll find out. Did it work? Maybe not. Unclear. Okay. What else? what else do we need to test here? Input.getKey. Is that the right way to handle inputs in Unity? It's been a little while since I've programmed something in Unity, so hope you'll forgive me making some mistakes here.
It's all good.
Input. I want get key down. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's what I want. They just passed the string space like that. Maybe we'll do that. See if that works out. So if input.getKey down space. All right. That's going to recompile. And we're going to run. Okay, what else can we do to debug this? We want to know if get key down space has happened. And if so, system.log. Tell me something. Log file. Using print. Is that a thing I can do? Can I just print things?
Or willy-nilly.
Yeah, it's gotta print things. Alright, space key was pressed. We did figure that part out. But our animator didn't want to play the hop animation. Did not want to set the hop trigger. So let's go back over to our animator, make sure it's doing the right things. Got this one. We didn't set our condition yet. Alright, so I need to set that. That's very important. So now I'm setting my condition to hop, which is the name of this parameter over here. So when hop happens, it's going to transition from the idle state to the hop animation. It's going to play that. When it's done with that, it's going to transition back to the idle state. See how that goes. Hey, we did it. All right. Good deal. So, that's my suggestion for importing your animations into Unity. I think making sure that you can set up that controller and get everything to run when you need it. A good way to sort of sanity check that yes, everything really did import correctly. It might otherwise look like, you know, you can see all the animation clips here in your project, and Unity says it imported them, but you know, if they're not in your game yet, there's still room for things to go awry. Alright, so that's what I wanted to show y'all with animation. For folks that are sticking around, I can go through one more example, which, or at least start going through one more example. It's a long one, but I have a file that I downloaded from BlendSwap, so let me show you BlendSwap real quick. Actually, we could do this interactively. That'd be more fun. So, this is a collection online where people can upload things they've made in Blender, and you can download them and use most of them for free-ish, mostly. I think all of them are some variant of permissive license. Some of them are Creative Commons. Some of them are Creative Commons 0, they're just public domain, anything goes. Some of them you do need to credit the author, which is, I think, always a good thing to do anyway. But they have a whole lot of models, so if there's something you want to use in your game and you don't have time or you don't know how to model it, you can come here you can find somebody else who's already done that. Do we have any requests for some game assets you'd like to use in your games? And we'll see what BlendSwap has to offer.
Good question. I heard someone say roguelike before.
Yeah. What's the thing you need for roguelike? You need some weapons for that, right?
Oh, do they have dragons?
Do they have dragons? I bet they do. I know the... Ooh, let's see. That finally loaded. So it is going to load some weapons. Let's see. I know the Blender Foundation publishes a movie or a project where they make a little short film and also open license all of their assets. So I think they do have a dragon on here somewhere. There's this guy. This is going to be very, very high poly. I don't know if Unity's going to be able to handle the number of... the level of detail of this, but maybe it will, maybe. We could also search for dragons, see if anyone's got something a little bit more low poly. Something that's not going to crash my computer while I'm also running OBS.
Oh no.
Alright. Well, we got a whole bunch of dragons, and some things that aren't but showed up in this category anyway. There's a low poly one. Let's try this guy out.
Oh, look at that guy. He's a spiny fellow.
Alright. So we'll download that. Save it here in Blender. That's good. Now we'll find out whether I picked an easy file or a hard file. See how well this imports into Unity.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to save that. We'll open our... Now hang on, I just saved that to this folder. Where's my low poly dragon? I got a low poly castle. That was the other asset I was gonna use as a test case. Worst case scenario, we can go back to that one, but maybe this is my downloads here. Low poly dragon. Ah, I see. It's still in a zip file, so we gotta unzip first, and then we should be able to load it in Blender. So, open. Let's go refresh this. There's a low poly dragon. Here it is. Okay. Look at this guy. This is a pretty cool guy. Alright. First thing I really suggest doing... It does not want to save. No save. Dragon texture not found. Okay. If you say so. Anyway, first thing I suggest doing is save as, create a separate copy of your file. I'm going to call this dragon dash export, because probably we're going to have to do make some destructive changes to this file, and having that clean copy that we can go back to is important. Gonna save us some hassle later, hopefully. You okay, Blender?
Hey, Blender.
Blender. Alright, now we're gonna try this export. Let's make sure I've got my dragon and the armature selected. Alright. Going to export. Export selected objects. We need our Y forward. We need to apply our transform. Good question I should ask myself before doing all of this, actually, is how big is this dragon? This dragon is 1 tall. 1 what? Good question. I guess this particular Blender file is not set up with specific units yet. Right now the default, if you just boot up a clean copy of Blender, is for all the units to be in meters and centimeters, and I think that's great because you can compare with real world objects and know what size to make things. I think if we go to world settings, maybe I can tell this to have units associated with its sizes. But before we do that, I guess we'll just export what we got and see how it goes. So this dragon is going to be 1 tall.
1 mini tall.
Or I guess height is half. It is 0.549 tall. All right. Do our FBX export. Selected objects. Y forward, Z up, apply transform. And we'll put this inside the Blender file here, or Blender folder, and we'll call that dragon. Doesn't need to be called dragon export, just dragon's fine. Export FBX. And we'll see how lucky we are. Did everything export just fine, or did it not? Come on, dragon. You okay, Unity? Still responding? Okay, there we go. That's wrong thing. You need this scene view. Okay, we're gonna put that dragon in the scene view. How did it go? It went okay. Our dragon's very small and not textured anymore.
Bun is bigger.
Yeah, the bun's bigger. So, the first thing that's usually how you can resolve some texture issues, come to this File External Data menu, and we're going to uncheck Automatically Pack Resources. We're going to click Unpack Resources and use File in current directory. So, that has hopefully put all of our textures in this textures file. Actually, it's probably put it in this textures file here. Okay, so that's the one we need to copy over. We'll copy our dragon texture into our Unity textures folder. And the first thing is, this has not resolved our model because the FBX that we exported doesn't know that the textures were unpacked yet. So I need to re-export that now that I've unpacked all the resources. One more time, FBX, export, dragon, selected objects, apply units, apply, yes, okay. All those things. We'll re-export, and we will come back over here to our models folder, and we'll drag that dragon file back in. Alright, so we got dragon 1 now. Okay. So, still no textures. And something that we can see in the Blender file. Oh, I still wanted that folder to be around. There we go. Alright, we'll come back to that. Something you notice in this Blender file is that it's got these material nodes set up. So this is a very specific way that Ooh, there's animation. I didn't realize that. Now we're playing it. Check that out.
Ooh. Ooh, wow.
Cool. Anyway, right. Here are some material nodes, and this is a particular way that Blender knows how to assign this texture to this material. But in order for Unity to be able to understand that, we have to be using the default shader. And the default shader in Blender is this principled BSDF, that's what it's called. So that's what's got all of our options. It's got our metallic and our specular and our roughness and those properties we showed before. So if I now attach this to base color, attach this to the out noodle there, now I've got this new material. Let's see, is this material named? It's called Material 6. I also think it's going to be helpful for us to name this something. So I'm going to call this Dragon. Thankfully our model's already named, so that's good. Model's called Dragon, material's called Dragon, texture's called Dragon. Good. Things have names. And we've linked our texture to our material, and we're using the default shader. And that means when we export this, hopefully, fingers crossed, Unity will have all of the textures assigned to the new model. So here's our re-export, here's our re-import. Dragon. And hey, that guy's really big. Okay. Let's do that guy. We got this other guy. Oh boy, what did you do, Unity? Did I screw it up? My cursor's stuck on this thing.
Oh no. Well.
Okay. Save your work often, people!
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. It's sunk into the Unity abyss.
Yes. The abyss. Alright. Save me, Windows Task Manager. My control delete isn't working either. Task Manager. Task Manager. Nope, that's not what I got. I got Task Scheduler. You need to type that right. Task Manager. Yes. That one. Okay. Okay, Unity Editor. We'll just have to relaunch that one. Okay. Go game jam work up. And we're back. Okay, but we don't have a dragon this time. So we're gonna re-import that. Here's our, no wait. Hang on, do we have a dragon? Just in the models folder. There's our dragon. Okay, we're gonna put it in the scene. See how that works. So there's our guy. He's really tiny. I don't think he should have been half unit tall. I think he should have been a little bigger than that.
No, but I like the bun like towering over him.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at it's in the distance. The dragon's scared. You can tell.
Yep.
Look at that powerful orb.
So I want to know Did I get my export settings right? It looks like I didn't, because he still came in sideways. So does this have all the transforms applied? Rotations are 0. Scale is 1. That's good. Location is 0. I also think this model didn't set the center point where I would have set it. I would have set the center point on the ground, and they set it in the middle of the dragon. So maybe that's something we can tweak while we're here too. Question is, can I tweak this without messing up the armature? I think that if I move everything up, I probably have messed everything up now. I have, yes. So don't do that. Let's see.
Whatever you do.
So I'm going to try another technique. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this dragon so it's where I want him to be. And I'm going to create an empty object. So this is something that just a point somewhere in space. We'll do plane axes here. And we're going to make the empty the parent of the dragon. So, did I get that right? Yeah, maybe. There we go. Okay. Dragon root. Okay. So now I've created this object that hopefully, now if I set this object where I want it to be in the Unity scene, the dragon will come along with it. It will be dragged along. There's a pun in there somewhere. Maybe. And now I need to select all these things. I need to select the empty object and the dragon and the armature, because that's what I want to export. So we'll do our FBX export one more time. We'll export dragon. Alright. We got apply transform, we got Y forward, we got Z up. See how it goes. Go and import. That's dragon 1. Alright. Put that in the center of our scene. I'll be honest, y'all. It's not looking that promising. Where'd that dragon go? It's invisible now.
Oh no. Every time you re-import it, it just gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, folks. I might call it there for tonight. I'm a little too... 脳が疲れた. Too brain tired to figure this one out for right now. But then anyway, I did at least show you a couple of things that you can do to resolve some common issues with pulling models from offline. From online. One is making sure that you have all of your materials using the default shader. And another is to make sure that you unpack all of the image textures. And if you'll remember, the one way we did that in our other files was going to the the image editor and exporting those one by one manually. So, image, save, that kind of thing. But the shortcut for doing that for all the images, in case there are a whole bunch, is to uncheck this automatically pack resources, and then to unpack. So between those two, I think you should usually be able to get something rendering in Unity that's at least save you some work of having to model it yourself, and get it looking like it should. All right. Thank you all for sticking with me. It's been a long workshop. Hope you all learned something. I have one last thing I want to share with you before I go, which is I wrote all this stuff down in a checklist in case you weren't taking notes and you wanted some. So, here are my general suggestions. When you're exporting from Blender, make sure your model origin is where you want it to be. Make sure your scale is set up correctly so that all of your objects are the right relative size. If you need meshes with back faces, then you can duplicate them and flip the normals. You gotta remember to save off your images so that Unity can find them as well. Then check your export settings when you're doing the FBX export. Select the objects you want, apply your transforms, set those forward and up axes. Last but not least, there's some work to do after you've put your stuff into Unity. You can put your models into the assets directory somewhere. You can extract your materials and tweak the settings there to make sure everything looks how you want it to how you want it to look in Unity, because Unity does not always match the Blender material settings that well. If you've got animated objects, create an avatar, put a script on them, set up your animation controller, and you can try it out in a scene. If you're looking for more cool Blender Unity type tutorials and stuff, here are some that I recommend. There's a YouTuber by the name of Imfenzia. He does a lot of low poly models, and I think he's got a really good approach to working smarter, not harder, shall we say. Taking shortcuts where it's appropriate. Ugurus does some more in-depth stuff, a lot more on the Unity side as well, but he does also use Blender and has some tips for importing Blender stuff into Unity. And lastly, there's an indie game developer called Jelle Vermander, I think. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that okay. Also a Blender user, also a Unity user, also makes some cool stuff. Do check it out. That's it for me. I hope to see you all at Code Chrysalis for Global Game Jam this weekend.
Yeah. We'll see you there.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Down there.